On a frozen morning in Harborwick, a billionaire nearly walked past an 8-year-old girl sitting motionless on a park bench. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She only whispered, "Mister, my chest feels tight." In that breathless second, his schedule shattered and 2 lives changed forever. Winter didn't arrive in Harborwick with fireworks. It arrived like a decision nobody voted on, quiet, official, and absolute. The river along downtown carried a thin, stubborn mist that made streetlights look tired. People moved fast with their shoulders up and their eyes down, as if attention itself could freeze. Declan Voss stepped out of the Voss Meridian Tower, the lobby warmth sealing behind him like a vault. His coat was tailored, his gloves new, his mind already 3 meetings ahead. Numbers, timelines, outcomes, the clean logic of control. His executive assistant's voice poured through his earpiece, calm, precise. Cars 3 minutes out. Investor call at 8. Press briefing at Declan didn't answer. He didn't need to. His life ran on agreement without conversation. Then the rhythm broke. A bench in the small public square half-rimmed with frost, and on it a child. She sat so still she looked like a forgotten detail in the scene. Not crying, not waving, not begging. Just present, like the city had placed her there and moved on. People passed her like she was weather. Declan told himself the usual line, "Someone else will handle it." He took 1 step past the bench. That's when the girl lifted her head. Not accusing, not pleading. Just tired, like she'd been awake inside winter for a long time. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks. Her dress was thin, faded, meant for a season that had already left. Declan slowed without deciding to. Her eyes met his, and something inside him, something he'd trained out of himself, shifted. She didn't reach for him. She didn't ask for money. She simply whispered 1 sentence soft enough to almost disappear under footsteps and wind. "Mister, my chest feels tight. No drama, no sobbing. Just information offered honestly." Declan felt his body stop, as if the words had turned into a hand on his sternum. Behind him, the city kept walking. In front of him, a child sat in the cold, like she had learned not to ask the world to change. And for the first time in a long time, Declan Voss realized the world wouldn't pause unless someone decided to pause first. Declan turned back like he was reversing a habit. Up close, the girl looked smaller than she had from a distance, bone-thin in posture, not body, as if she'd been practicing how to take up less space. Her hands trembled just enough to be noticed if someone was actually looking. Declan crouched. Not a performance, a choice. "What's your name?" he asked, voice lower than he used on grown adults. She hesitated, as if names only mattered when people planned to keep them. "June," she said. "Juniper." "Juniper," Declan repeated, letting the name settle between them like a candle in a draft. Her breathing was shallow, careful. Like every inhale had to earn permission. "You're cold," he said. June nodded once. "It's okay, I don't mind." It didn't sound brave. It sounded rehearsed. Declan's earpiece crackled. "Sir, are you hearing me? The board is—" He slid a finger to the earpiece, not removing it yet, like he was still clinging to the life that told him to keep moving. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. June shrugged. "I wait sometimes." "For who? My mom?" Declan didn't like how simply she said it, like a weather report, like adults leaving was as normal as traffic. "What's your mom's name, Marin? And does she know you're here?" June's eyes dropped to her knees. "She's busy." That single word landed hard. Busy, the adult shield, the kid's law of nature. A gust of wind sliced across the square. June shivered sharper this time, trying to fold herself smaller. Declan made his decision without announcing it. He shrugged off his coat and draped it around her shoulders with slow care, no sudden touches, no grabbing. The fabric swallowed her frame, warm and heavy. June's fingers clutched the sleeves immediately, like she was afraid warmth might get taken back. "I won't take it," she said quickly. I can give it back. You don't have to, Declan replied. It's just to keep you warm. Her eyes lifted again. Surprise flashed there, not gratitude, not relief, just surprise that someone had stopped. Declan looked around at the crowd moving past, and something in him sharpened. Juniper, he said gently, we're going somewhere warm, just to check your breathing. June's mouth tightened. I'm not in trouble. The words hit like a bruise you didn't know you had. No, Declan said immediately. You're not. He held her gaze like a promise. You didn't do anything wrong. Declan flagged a taxi with the same calm authority he used in conference rooms, but his hands felt different now, less certain, more awake. He opened the back door and stepped aside, letting June choose. She paused, eyes flicking to the street, then to him. Not fear calculation, a child measuring risk. Then she slid into the seat quietly, still wrapped in his coat, like it was a shelter she didn't want to test. Declan got in on the other side, leaving space between them. The heater hummed soft and steady. June kept her hands hidden inside the sleeves, shoulders slightly raised, as if warmth was something she had to deserve. Harborwick Children's Medical Center, Declan told the driver. Pediatric intake. June's eyes darted to him. Hospital just to check your breathing, he said. You told me your chest feels tight. That matters. It's probably nothing, she murmured like she was repeating someone else's line. Declan didn't argue. He just held his decision steady. His earpiece crackled again. Sir, the investor called. Declan's thumb hovered. Then he removed the earpiece and dropped it into his pocket. The voice cut off mid-sentence. For the first time that morning, his schedule didn't own his spine. Outside the window, Harborwick slid past in gray-blue tones, frosted storefronts, tight faces, people bundled in their own urgency. Inside the taxi, the world narrowed to heat and the quiet sound of June's breath. Declan pulled out his phone and opened a blank note. You said your mom's name is Marin, he offered. Do you know her number? June hesitated, then whispered it slowly, carefully, as if each digit was expensive. Declan typed it in without comment. Then he turned the screen toward her. So you can see I'm not changing it, he said. June blinked at the gesture. Small trust built the only way it ever is, quiet, practical, respectful. The hospital came into view, glass doors glowing warm against winter. Declan stepped out first, paid, then opened June's door. He didn't lift her. He didn't crowd her. He offered his hand. June stared at it for a full second, then placed her small fingers into his palm. Cold hand, steady grip. And as they walked through the sliding doors, warm air rushed over June's face and her shoulders loosened a fraction, as if her body had been waiting for permission to breathe. The pediatric intake desk moved fast without feeling harsh. A nurse approached with a kindness that didn't talk down. Hi, sweetheart. What's your name? June swallowed. Juniper. June. Okay, June, the nurse said, smiling like she meant it. You're safe here. Declan kept his voice even. I found her outside in the cold. She says her chest feels tight. They didn't ask Declan to be a hero. They treated him like what he was, an adult who brought a child in. A warm blanket appeared. A pulse ox clip slid onto June's finger like a tiny glowing sticker. June watched everything closely, nodding when spoken to, too controlled for 8 years old. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She performed easy. Then Dr. Riley Chen arrived, quick steps, calm face, the kind of presence that made rooms less frightening. Dr. Chen knelt near the bed. Hi, June. I'm Dr. Chen. I'm going to listen to your lungs and ask a few questions, okay? June nodded immediately. Too immediately. The stethoscope was warm. Dr. Chen explained each step before touching. Deep breath in and out. Perfect. Declan watched the doctor's expression like he watched stock tickers, looking for the moment it changed. When Dr. Chen checked the monitor, her face didn't turn into panic. It turned into focus. She stepped closer to Declan, voice low behind the curtain edge. Her oxygen saturation is lower than I'd like, Dr. Chen said. Not an emergency this second, but not something we ignore. Declan kept his face steady. What does that mean? It means tests, Dr. Chen replied. And it may mean she's been compensating for a while. Kids don't get this calm about breathing unless it's been part of their normal. Across the bed, June tugged the blanket higher. Comfort, not drama. A nurse approached Declan with a clipboard. Sir, are you her parent or guardian? No, Declan said. I'm the one who brought her in. The nurse nodded, respectful. We'll contact her mother. You can stay during basic intake if you'd like. June's eyes darted at the word mother, like it carried a whole world. Declan glanced at his phone calendar alerts, stacking like dominoes. He turned the screen face down. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to be solved by speed. Dr. Chen pulled up a stool. June, she said gently, when does it feel tight? June's answer came smooth, practiced. When it's cold, when I walk too far, sometimes when I'm just sitting. No fear, no complaint, just data. Do you ever feel tired? Dr. Chen asked. Yes. Out of breath easily. Yes. Does it hurt when you breathe? June paused half a second then. Not really. Declan noticed the pause. Dr. Chen noticed it too. And when you feel tired, Dr. Chen continued softly. What do you usually do? June's mouth lifted into a polite smile, the kind meant to reassure adults. I sit very still, she said. Then it goes away. Declan felt his jaw tighten, not from anger, but from the weight of what that meant. Sitting very still wasn't a solution a child invented. It was a strategy learned. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. That's very responsible of you. June relaxed a fraction at the praise. A nurse entered with forms explaining every step before doing it. June nodded, compliant, careful. Then she said something lightly, like a compliment to herself. My mom says I'm good at not causing trouble. The room went quiet in a way machines can't measure. Dr. Chen's voice stayed kind but firm. You don't cause trouble by needing help. June blinked, processing the idea like it was a new language. Declan leaned closer. You did the right thing by telling me. June looked at him, searching his face. Not for warmth, for consistency. A social worker stepped in with gentle authority. Tessa Lang. Folder in hand, eyes that had seen too many kids who learned to be quiet. Mr. Voss, Tessa said. Thank you for bringing June in. Declan nodded. Have you reached her mother? Tessa exhaled softly. We're trying. The number goes straight to voicemail. At the word voicemail, June's eyes opened wider. Then she forced them calm again, like calm was her job. Tessa lowered her voice. We'll keep her safe while we locate Marin. That's standard procedure. June's fingers tightened on the blanket. Declan saw it and felt something settle in him, quiet certainty. He wasn't leaving this room the way he'd left the bench. Tessa spoke carefully, like each syllable was a door. If we can't locate her mom quickly, we coordinate a safe, temporary plan. June's head snapped up. Temporary, she whispered. Tessa turned toward her immediately, voice warm. Sweetheart, that just means you won't be alone. Adults will make sure you're cared for. June clutched the blanket tighter. Her lips trembled not with tears, but with effort. The effort of staying controlled. Declan watched her like you watch a glass about to crack. June slid off the bed slowly. The IV line tugged gently, safe but real. She didn't run. She didn't panic. She walked straight to Declan. Please, she said, close enough that he could hear how careful her breathing was. I'll be very quiet. I won't sit on benches anymore. The sentence hit Declan like a punch without impact. A child bargaining with silence. Declan knelt immediately. June, he said softly. Steady, none of this is because you did something wrong. Her eyes shone, but she refused to let tears happen, like tears were something that would cost her safety. "I just don't want to be somewhere new," she whispered. "Not without my mom." Tessa stepped back slightly, giving space. Respect, not spectacle. Declan looked at Tessa with the same precision he used in negotiations, but his voice was different now, human. "What are the legal options for me to remain here with her today while you locate her mother?" Tessa blinked, surprised by the clarity. "There is a temporary medical support designation," she said slowly. "It allows a non-parent adult to remain with a child during treatment with oversight." June looked between them, anxious but quiet. "Does that mean you stay?" she asked. Declan didn't rush. He looked at her fully. "Yes," he said. "That means I stay if it's done properly, if it keeps you safe." June's shoulders dropped in visible relief. Not excitement, relief. "Okay," she breathed. Tessa nodded. "I'll bring the forms." As Tessa left, Declan felt something heavy and clean in his chest. This wasn't charity. This was presence with rules. And for someone like Declan, Voss rules were the language he trusted most. The small conference room off pediatrics hummed under fluorescent light. Tessa set the forms down like they were simple. They weren't. "This designation allows you to stay with June," she explained. "Make limited decisions with hospital oversight. It does not remove her mother from anything." Declan scanned the text like a contract, because it was one. Not about money, about responsibility. He picked up the pen, paused, then signed, steady, deliberate. Each signature felt like stepping over a line he couldn't unstep. When he returned to June's room, she was half awake, eyes fluttering open at the sound of the door. "You came back," she murmured. "I said I would," Declan replied, pulling a chair close, but not too close. A nurse adjusted the monitor with a soft smile. "She's doing well. We'll keep her overnight for observation." June's gaze stayed on Declan like she was watching for disappearance. Tessa re-entered later with a small plastic bin. "June's belongings," she said gently. "Standard procedure." Declan nodded and glanced inside. Worn sneakers, soles thin, a hair clip missing one side, a faded blue backpack. He hesitated before unzipping it like he was touching someone's private weather. Inside, crayons worn down to stubs, a folded piece of paper. He opened it carefully. A drawing. A river colored dark blue, almost black, like it had swallowed light. On one bank, a small square building labeled home in uneven letters. On the other, jagged gray shapes with thin lines drifting upward. Above it, a name written like a child, trying to be exact, Blackwater. Declan stared. He knew that name. Blackwater Industrial Systems sat along the older bend of Harborwick River near Millstone Bend Flats, a cluster of older apartments downwind from the industrial corridor. A place he'd once seen on a map during a due diligence briefing. A place connected to a competitor's acquisition proposal currently sitting on his desk. Dr. Chen stepped closer, quiet. "Kids draw what they see," she said, "or what they feel. It's observational." June stirred in her sleep, fingers tightening around the little stuffed giraffe a nurse had given her earlier, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to keep comfort. Declan folded the drawing and put it back exactly where it belonged. Not because he wanted to hide it, because it was evidence of a world that had been asking for attention and not getting it. He sat back down, chair close enough that June didn't have to ask if he was still there. Outside the window, snow drifted past the glass. Inside, Declan Voss made another decision, silent, fierce, and careful. He would not turn this into a spectacle. He would turn it into proof. Morning arrived, filtered through blinds and hospital glass. June woke slowly, the way kids do when they aren't startled by fear. She blinked, then found Declan in the chair, coffee gone cold in his hands. "You didn't leave?" she said. More statement than question. "No," Declan replied. "I stayed." June tested a breath, small, careful. It feels easier today. Not perfect, but better. Dr. Chen returned with updates. Her oxygen is improving, she said. That's a good sign. Still waiting on some panels? June listened, like a tiny adult eyes focused. Does that mean I can walk with supervision? Dr. Chen said. Slowly. June slid her feet into socks with intense concentration, like it was an exam. Declan offered his hand again, not insisting, just present. She took it. They walked a short hallway past murals of animals and painted clouds. June's steps were cautious but steady. Then she spoke suddenly, eyes on the floor. Most people don't wait. Declan slowed. What do you mean they say they'll come back? She said. But then something else happens. Declan crouched slightly, meeting her eyes. If I say I'm coming back, he said I mean it. June studied his face like she was reading fine print. Okay, she decided. Tessa appeared with a gentle update. We still haven't reached your mom, June. But we're following leads. Hospital outreach employer checks everything by procedure. June nodded, calm on the surface. Her fingers tightened around Declan's sleeve. Tessa turned to Declan. If it takes longer, the designation can be extended with oversight only if you're willing. Declan looked at June the way she stood, taller than yesterday, breathing a little easier, trusting a little more. I'm willing, he said. June's eyes widened. Even if it takes a while. Even then, Declan answered. Her shoulders relaxed, not because the problem was solved, because someone was staying. Later, June sat by the window, coloring with new crayons a nurse brought. This time, the river on her page was lighter, still dark in places, but changing. Declan watched the drawing form, and something in him cracked open quietly. Not guilt, a responsibility he couldn't unlearn now. June paused mid-color, then asked the question that held her whole world inside it. Will I go home? Declan answered honestly. We're going to make sure you're safe first. June nodded slowly. She didn't look relieved. She looked like she was learning how to live inside uncertainty without being alone in it. With hospital approval and full documentation, Declan drove to Millstone Bend Flats. No sirens, no cinematic danger, just quiet neglect. The complex rose in muted gray paint, peeling softly like it had simply gotten tired. The river lay nearby, wide and slow, carrying a faint metallic smell that you only noticed if you stopped long enough to admit it. Declan didn't go inside uninvited. He met the property manager first, introduced himself, clearly explained the situation, showed hospital paperwork, asked permission to verify conditions, not disrupt them. Everything clean. Everything documented. Unit B12 was modest, clean, worn. Inside, the air felt heavier than it should have. Not obvious. Not dramatic. Just wrong in a way your lungs might notice before your brain did. On a small table sat folders stacked neatly, printed emails, handwritten notes, dates labeled in careful ink. Tap kitchen, river morning, river after rain. Beside them were small sealed jars of water samples, each labeled. This wasn't chaos. This was persistence. Declan's chest tightened with a strange respect. The mother hadn't vanished from irresponsibility. She'd been fighting something invisible correctly without anyone listening. He photographed the folders with permission, took notes, did not move anything, did not clean up. Evidence stayed where it belonged. On the refrigerator, a child's drawing pinned by a magnet. The same river, darker on one side, and the jagged gray shapes on the other bank. June hadn't imagined it. Outside, Declan stood near the stairwell and inhaled slowly. Even he, built for comfort, wrapped in insulation, felt the faint sting. He got back in his car and sat for a moment before starting it. In his other life, problems got solved by calling the right person and pressing hard. Here, pressure wasn't the answer. Proof was. When he returned to the hospital, June was awake. You went somewhere, she said immediately, eyes sharp. Yes, Declan replied honestly. I saw your home. Her fingers gripped the blanket. Is it bad? Declan chose his words like he was building a bridge. "It's not your fault," he said, "but it needs help." June nodded once, absorbing the truth without drama. And in that moment, Declan understood something crucial. Helping June didn't mean pulling her out of her world like a rescue scene. It meant making her world safer the right way, so she didn't have to be brave just to breathe. Days passed in measured steps. June's breathing improved, but Dr. Chen stayed careful. "Healing isn't instant," she reminded, "but she's responding well." June treated recovery like homework. She listened, she rested, she asked questions that revealed how closely she watched the world. "Is breathing supposed to feel easy all the time?" she asked one morning. "Not always," Dr. Chen said, "but it shouldn't feel like work." June nodded like she was saving that sentence for later. Tessa updated them daily. "We confirmed Marin Hale submitted multiple environmental reports over the past year," she said. "They weren't followed up properly." June's eyes narrowed, not angry, just understanding. She wasn't complaining, June said softly. She was trying to fix it. Yes, Tessa agreed. She was. Declan didn't storm offices. He didn't call reporters. He didn't threaten anyone. He hired independent environmental specialists credentialed boring correct. People who wrote reports with footnotes instead of outrage. Everything got logged. Everything got verified. Declan kept his name out of the spotlight because spotlight makes people defensive. He wanted cooperation. He wanted action. One afternoon, June handed Declan a new drawing. The river was lighter. The factory shape was still there, but smaller. "You think it can get better?" she asked. Declan looked at her carefully. "I know it can," he said, "because people are finally paying attention." June breathed in slow and nodded. Then Tessa entered the room with news that made the air feel different. "We located your mom," she said gently. "She's safe." June didn't jump. She didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes and let out a long breath, like she'd been holding her ribs together with willpower. "Is she tired?" June asked. Tessa smiled. "A little. But she wants to see you very soon." Declan watched June's shoulders loosen, not with excitement, with relief. Later in the hallway, Tessa spoke quietly to Declan. "Your involvement has been appropriate and transparent," she said. "I want you to know that." Declan nodded. "I'm not here to replace anyone." Tessa's eyes softened. "You didn't. You protected space until the truth could arrive." That night, Declan sat beside June as she slept, the stuffed giraffe pressed to her chest, like a guard. He realized this wasn't a story about rescue. It was a story about time, given time, respected time used correctly. And soon the person who'd been fighting quietly all along would finally walk through the door. The reunion happened without music. No cameras, no crowd. Just a small hospital room with warm light and a quiet door. Marin Hale stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was allowed inside her own life again. She looked thinner than June's stories suggested exhaustion, written gently across her face. But her eyes were clear, steady, with the kind of determination that survives being ignored. "June," Marin whispered. June sat up slowly, watching her mother cross the room like she might vanish if approached too quickly. "You came back," June said. Marin dropped to her knees, careful not to overwhelm her hands, hovering like she was asking permission to touch her own child. "I promised," Marin said. June leaned forward and rested her forehead against her mother's. No rush. No tears. Just contact, real quiet, complete. Declan stepped back immediately, giving them space. Tessa stayed nearby, respectful and unobtrusive. "I was trying to make things better," Marin said softly. "I didn't want you to worry." June nodded. I waited. 2 sentences, 2 worlds. Later, the adults spoke in the hall with the kind of calm that only happens when people stop pretending. Temporary relocation away from the river, medical follow-ups, Environmental remediation and oversight. Everything documented. Nothing rushed, nothing hidden. Marin's voice shook once, not with fear, with fatigue. I filed reports, she said, over and over. They acted like I was dramatic. Declan didn't interrupt. He didn't correct. He didn't claim credit. He simply handed her a printed folder, organized, dated, verified, compiled by independent specialists. They won't be able to ignore it this time, he said quietly. Marin stared at him, then at the folder, then back at him. Why, she asked. Declan answered honestly. Because she sat on a bench and told me the truth. And I realized I'd been walking past truth for a long time. Back in the room, June looked at Declan with the kind of focus that always made him take words seriously. You stayed, she said. Yes, Declan replied. June's mouth twitched like a small smile. Thank you for stopping. Declan felt his throat tighten. Thank you for trusting me. As he walked down the corridor, the hospital lights felt different, less sterile, more human. He hadn't saved anyone. He'd simply listened long enough for the right people and the real mother of this story to arrive. Life didn't snap back into perfect shape. It softened. June's mornings began with breathing exercises that felt like games. Slow inhales, gentle holds, long exhales like blowing out invisible candles. Dr. Chen praised her not for being good, but for being honest. Claire Marin slept in the chair beside the bed at first, then moved to a cot, then finally slept like someone who could stop listening for disaster. June noticed everything. The first time she took a breath without thinking, she looked up like she'd discovered magic. That one felt easy, she whispered. Marin's eyes filled, but she didn't make it heavy. She just squeezed June's hand. I love hearing that. Declan visited daily, never overstaying, never vanishing. He brought books about rivers, animals, places that change over time. He didn't bring gifts meant to impress. He brought consistency. Tessa coordinated next steps with careful clarity. Temporary housing away from the river, she explained. Follow-up care. Continued environmental review. Marin stays the decision-maker. Declan's role becomes whatever boundaries you both choose appropriately. Marin watched Declan. Appropriate, she repeated, and there was gratitude in her voice, but also protectiveness. The right kind. Declan nodded once. Whatever is best for June. June listened, then asked the question that proved she'd been paying attention to all the important things. If Mom is tired, she said, can I still see her? Yes, Tessa answered immediately. Of course. June's shoulders relaxed, not because life was fixed, because love had rules, now rules that protected it. A week later, June handed Declan a new drawing. The river was lighter. The factory still existed, but smaller and farther away. 3 figures stood on the bank, one tall, one medium, one small. Close, but not overlapping. It's not finished, June said. But it's better. Declan smiled softly. That's how real change works. Outside the hospital window, the winter sky looked less cruel. And inside, a child learned a new truth, quiet, steady, unbelievable. In the best way, needing help is not trouble. Being seen is not luck. And sometimes the strongest thing an adult can do is simply stop and keep choosing to stay. June left Harborwick Children's Medical Center on a quiet morning that didn't look heroic at all, just ordinary light, ordinary footsteps, ordinary paperwork. That was the point. Ordinary meant safe. Marin Hale held June's hand like she was holding a promise. Declan Voss walked half a step behind, not because he was unsure, but because he'd learned something new. Some moments belonged to mother and child first. Their temporary apartment sat on a higher block away from the river bend. The hall smelled like clean paint and warmed laundry. June paused at the doorway, eyes scanning the corners the way some kids scan strangers. Windows open easy, Marin said gently, testing one latch. No fighting. June nodded, then did something small and intense. She stood still and listened. Not for drama, for air. It's quiet, she whispered. Declan watched her chest rise and fall. No hitch, no negotiation. June stepped inside like she was entering a room that might change its mind. She set her backpack down carefully, then walked the perimeter one wall, then the next, touching nothing, just mapping safety with her eyes. Maren tried to smile, but her smile carried fatigue. You don't have to be on watch anymore, baby. June's mouth tightened, not rebellious, just honest. I do it without thinking. Declan cleared his throat softly. That makes sense, he said. Your body learned it. June looked at him as if surprised he understood that something could be learned without being taught out loud. A knock came. Tessa Lang, the social worker, with a folder and a calm face. Just checking in, she said. Everything documented, everything transparent. Maren exhaled like she'd been holding a long breath for months. Thank you. Tessa looked at June. How's the breathing? June thought, then answered like a scientist. Easier. Not perfect, but not tight. Declan felt his own chest loosen. Not because the story was over, because the next chapter could finally be written without fear. June walked to the window and opened it 2 inches. Cold air slipped in, but it didn't bite. She inhaled. Then she said almost to herself, This air doesn't feel like it's mad at me. Declan turned away so nobody would see his expression change too much. Not because he was embarrassed, because he was determined. Quiet wasn't the end. Quiet was the beginning. The community meeting was held in a modest library room where chairs didn't match and coffee tasted like it had been brewed out of duty. No cameras, no grand speeches, just residents, city staff, and a whiteboard that squeaked when someone tried to write the word accountability. Maren sat near the front with a folder on her lap. June sat beside her with a sketchbook and new crayons, small shoulders relaxed but alert. Declan stood near the back, not hidden, just not centered. A city representative spoke first, careful and formal. We're here to hear concerns regarding the river corridor and nearby industrial operations. Maren raised her hand. When called on, she didn't explode. She didn't beg. She didn't perform pain. She opened her folder and placed her evidence on the table like a measured truth. Here are my reports, she said. Dated, logged, submitted, ignored. Her voice didn't shake until the last word, and even then she steadied it. People leaned in, not because she was loud, because she was clear. Declan watched faces change. It was subtle. A few brows tightened. A few mouths went still. The room began to realize this wasn't a rumor. A man in a neat coat introduced himself as a consultant for Blackwater Industrial Systems. He smiled like smooth glass. We take community wellness very seriously, he said, and we're always open to. Maren held up one page. Then tell me why these emails were never answered. The consultant's smile flickered just once. Declan felt it, the first real crack in the wall. Not violence, not chaos. Just truth meeting a place where truth hadn't been allowed to sit. June kept coloring. She drew the river, but lighter than before. On the far bank, she drew a factory shape, smaller, pushed back. Maren noticed. Her eyes softened. A resident spoke up. My kids cough more in winter. Another added, the water tastes metallic after rain. This was the tension, a room full of people realizing they'd each been carrying the same quiet problem alone. Declan didn't step forward to rescue the moment. He waited until Tessa nodded at him, permission boundary appropriate. He spoke calmly. Independent testing has begun. Results will be shared publicly. Not filtered, not buried. The consultant blinked. And who are you? Declan didn't smile. Someone who stopped walking. And for the first time, the room felt like it could move forward without needing to shout to be heard. Blackwater's offer arrived 2 days later, wrapped in polite language and delivered with a smile that tried to look like help. A representative met Maren at a neutral office downtown. Tessa attended. Declan stayed outside the room by agreement, visible but not dominating. The representative slid a folder across the table. A relocation stipend, he said. Medical support, a goodwill package. Marin didn't touch it, and in exchange, the man's voice stayed gentle. We'd ask for discretion, to avoid misunderstandings. The community can become emotional. Marin's hands tightened on her own folder. You mean quiet? The representative's smile sharpened by half a degree. We mean peaceful. Tessa's tone stayed professional. Any agreement would need review and full informed consent. Marin looked down at the number printed on the page. It could solve a lot. Rent, bills, stability. The kind of stability a mother prays for when her child has learned to be too calm. Then June's voice appeared in Marin's memory, soft as a held breath. I'll be very quiet. Marin pushed the folder back untouched. My child doesn't need your hush money. The representative leaned in slightly. Mrs. Hale, please. This is a practical solution. Marin's eyes lifted. Practical for who? Outside the room, Declan felt his phone vibrate, board messages, meeting reminders, the old world calling him back into speed. He didn't answer. When Marin and Tessa came out, Marin's face looked pale but steadier than before. Declan asked quietly, Are you okay? Marin gave a breath that sounded like it had been waiting behind her ribs. I almost said yes, she admitted, because I'm tired. Declan nodded, no judgment. Of course you're tired. Marin's voice dropped. But then I remembered quiet isn't the same as safe. A cold wind cut across the sidewalk. June, bundled in a warm coat, now looked up at them. Is quiet bad? Marin crouched. No, baby. Quiet can be good, Declan added gently. Quiet is only bad when someone is buying it. June absorbed that like a lesson she didn't want to need. Then she reached for Marin's hand, not clinging, choosing. Across the street, the Blackwater representative watched them leave, smile gone, now replaced by calculation. The tension shifted shape. Not dramatic. Dangerous in a grown-up way, paperwork, pressure, persuasion. Declan glanced at the building's reflective glass and saw his old self in it, clean, distant, untouchable. Then he turned away. Next steps, he asked Tessa. Tessa's eyes were calm. We keep everything documented, she said, and we don't let them move this into silence. Declan nodded once. Good, because he was learning something that cost more than money. Staying meant choosing again, even when it got inconvenient. 3 floors above Harborwick, Declan Voss sat at the head of a conference table where sunlight bounced off glass like a weapon. The agenda was clean, profitable, predictable, until the name appeared on slide 7. Blackwater Industrial Systems Acquisition Review. Declan's CFO spoke with crisp confidence. Strategically located assets, strong cash flow, manageable reputational risk, manageable. Declan stared at the word like it was a lie disguised as a statistic. A board member leaned forward. We can close before Q2 if we move fast. Declan's assistant texted press will love it. Declan's mind flashed not to headlines, but to June on a bench whispering, My chest feels tight. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam the table. Cinematic anger would be easy. He chose something harder, control with conscience. I'm pausing the acquisition, Declan said. The room froze. The CFO blinked. Sir, this is a major opportunity. Declan's tone stayed steady. So is breathing. A few people laughed softly, thinking it was a metaphor. Declan didn't let it become one. Blackwater is under independent environmental review tied to resident health concerns. We will not acquire a liability we refuse to investigate. A board member's smile tightened. Do we have evidence? Declan slid a folder across the table. Not Marin's originals, copies, verified, dated, chain of custody documented, independent sampling, historical reports, community testimony logs, and medical correlation currently under clinical oversight. The CFO's voice lowered. This is Personal, Declan didn't flinch. It's responsible. Silence stretched, the kind that tries to intimidate. Declan held it. In my world, he continued, numbers are supposed to represent reality, not hide it. A board member asked, "What's your alternative?" Declan looked around the room. "We fund remediation support and community monitoring as a condition of any future consideration. No hush agreements, no pressure tactics, full transparency, or we walk away." Someone scoffed. "That's not how business works." Declan's eyes remained calm. Then business needs to learn. After the meeting, Declan stepped into the elevator alone. His hands didn't shake, but his chest felt tight in a different way. Not fear. Alignment. He pulled his phone out, saw the stacked messages, and wrote one line to Tessa. Paused acquisition. Blackwater can't hide behind me. Proceed with reports. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He took a slow breath and let it be slow. Because speed had once been his shield. Now it was his enemy. Proof didn't arrive with applause. It arrived in boring fonts and official stamps. Tessa laid the independent lab results on Marin's kitchen table like a set of keys. Verified contaminants above allowable thresholds in runoff samples, she said. Correlated with complaint timelines. Marin's eyes closed for 1 second, relief and rage trying to share the same space. June sat nearby, coloring quietly. She wasn't listening to every word, but she heard the tone. Kids always do. "Does that mean?" Marin began. "It means the city has to respond," Tessa said. "Properly this time. Monitoring stations, remediation plan, enforcement." Declan arrived later, not with gifts, but with a thin binder and a map. He placed it down and looked at Marin. "This isn't a victory," he said. "It's a start." Marin's voice went rough. "I've been starting for a year." Declan nodded. "I know." June looked up from her page. "Is the river sick?" Marin hesitated, searching for a child-safe truth that still respected her daughter's intelligence. Declan answered gently. "The river got hurt by things people didn't handle right. Now people are handling it." June considered that. Then she drew 3 small dots along the riverbank. "These are the new stations," she decided. Tessa smiled. "That's exactly what they are." A city email came that night, public hearing scheduled. Cleanup plan pending approval. No fireworks, no parade. But Marin read the words 3 times like she didn't trust them to stay real. June walked to the window and inhaled. Cold air, but cleaner. Or maybe she just noticed it differently now because she wasn't alone in noticing. Declan stood behind her, giving space. "How's your breathing today?" June thought hard, then answered with surprising certainty. "It's easier when grown-ups tell the truth." Marin's hand went to her mouth. Not crying, holding herself, Declan's chest tightened, not with guilt this time, with determination. Outside, across the city, people would argue about budgets, timelines, blame. Inside this apartment, the only argument that mattered had already been settled. June would not be asked to be brave in silence again. And proof, real proof, had finally done what kindness alone couldn't. It forced the world to stop pretending. June's first week back at school wasn't dramatic. It was harder than that. Normal. New classroom smells, new noises, new expectations. The kind of busy that used to swallow kids whole. Marin walked her to the gate, hand lingering on June's shoulder a moment longer than usual. "If you feel tight," she said softly, "you tell your teacher. You tell me. You don't sit very still and hope it goes away." June nodded, serious. "I'll tell." Declan watched from the car, not stepping out, respecting the boundary that mattered. June didn't need a shadow. She needed a life. At recess, a classmate sat beside June on the steps. "Why were you gone?" June's fingers tightened on her pencil. The old instinct to be small flashed through her like a reflex. Then she remembered Dr. Chen's voice. "Needing help isn't trouble." "I had to get my breathing checked," June said simply. The other girl blinked. Like asthma, sort of, June replied. But it got better when we moved, and when people listened. The girl frowned like that concept was weird. People didn't listen. June shrugged, but it was a different shrug now, not surrender. More like that was true. Now it's changing. In gym class, June ran one lap and stopped on purpose. The teacher approached. You okay, June placed a hand on her chest. Calm. I'm pacing. My doctor said it's smart. The teacher nodded, impressed. Good job. June's eyes widened slightly at being praised for self-care instead of silence. After school, she climbed into Marin's car and said, I didn't pretend today. Marin's grip tightened on the steering wheel. I'm proud of you. June looked out the window, then asked quietly, do grown-ups ever forget to stop? Marin's voice softened. Sometimes. June nodded like she was filing that away. Then we remind them. That weekend, Declan came by for dinner, simple, warm, no performance. June handed him a drawing. The river was bright blue now, curving wide. The factory was still there, but pushed far back. Trees stood between. It's not finished, June said. But it's better. Declan smiled. That's real life, he said. June tilted her head. Real life is slower. Yes, Declan admitted. And that's why it lasts. Spring arrived the way hope often does, quietly, without permission. One mild afternoon, Marin and June walked to a small neighborhood park. Declan followed at a respectful distance, holding coffee he never finished. June stopped when she saw it, a bench near the path, sun-warmed wood, ordinary shape. She stared at it like it could speak. Marin slowed. You okay? June nodded, but her throat moved as she swallowed. Benches used to mean waiting. Marin didn't rush her. She sat down first, leaving a small space. Not forcing closeness. Offering it. June climbed up beside her legs, swinging freely. This one feels different, June said after a moment. How? Marin asked. June stared at her shoes, then answered with the kind of clarity only kids can manage when they've lived too much quietly. It doesn't feel like waiting, she said. It feels like choosing. Declan's chest tightened. He stayed still, letting the moment belong to them. June waved him over with 2 fingers, an invitation, not a demand. Declan approached slowly. What are we choosing today? June thought carefully. To sit, and then to leave when we want. Declan smiled. That sounds like a good plan. June pulled out her sketchbook and drew the bench, the path, the trees. 3 figures appeared again, one tall, one medium, one small. Close, but not overlapping. Marin watched the drawing form. You draw a lot lately. It helps me see things, June said, when they're not scary anymore. Declan felt those words settle in him like a weight he didn't want to put down. A jogger passed. A dog barked once. Life moved around them, unremarkable and safe. June closed the sketchbook and hopped down. I'm done here. No hesitation. No need to linger. As they walked away, Declan glanced back at the bench. It no longer looked like a place a child could disappear. It was just a bench again. And somehow that was the biggest ending he'd ever seen. The city's response rolled out in stages, monitoring stations along the river, public reports, posted monthly cleanup crews scheduled with boring official precision. No dramatic takedowns. Just responsibility finally correctly applied. Blackwater issued statements that tried to sound caring. We remain committed to community wellness, they said, as if commitment was a feeling instead of an action. Declan refused the spotlight. He did the unglamorous work, funding independent oversight, supporting Marin's legal access to records, ensuring residents had transportation, to hearings, helping create a community medical fund that didn't require silence in exchange. Tessa called it infrastructure for dignity. June called it something simpler, grown-up guardrails. One evening, June sat at the kitchen table drawing again. This time the river curved wide and clear. The bench was there, too empty. Marin glanced at it. Why is the bench empty? June smiled. Because nobody needs it right now. Declan felt warmth in his chest. He didn't try to explain away. Later on a walk, June asked him the question she'd been collecting like a pebble in her pocket. Do people ever forget to stop? Declan answered honestly. Sometimes. June looked up. Then how do we make them remember? Declan exhaled slowly. We build systems, he said. Rules and checks that make ignoring harder. We make truth easier to find. June considered that with total seriousness. So stopping isn't just luck. No, Declan said. Stopping should be normal. June nodded once satisfied. Maren watched them from a step behind, eyes soft, but guarded in the right way, the way a mother guards what finally feels safe. Declan turned to Maren. I'll keep it appropriate, he said quietly. Maren's voice was steady. I know, she replied. That's why it works. The tension of the old story bench cold silence didn't vanish. It changed shape. It became a reminder, not a threat. And that was the point, not a perfect life. A manageable one, an honest one, a safer one. Summer followed gently, as if respecting the pace they'd learned to keep. June's checkups became routine. Dr. Chen smiled more during appointments, less worried, more proud. You're doing exactly what your body needs, she told June. Listening. June took that seriously. She listened the way some kids listen for footsteps, except now it wasn't fear. It was care. Maren's work stabilized. She still looked tired sometimes, but it was a tiredness that could be recovered from, not the kind that eats the future. Declan remained present in the rhythm, not as a solution, not as a center. Sometimes dinner, sometimes a ride, sometimes just a text to Maren, need anything. Sometimes the best gift was predictability. One evening, golden light spilled across the living room floor. June sat cross-legged, coloring quietly. Each breath came naturally, without effort, without thought. She paused, took a deep breath anyway, and smiled. That one felt easy. Maren reached over and squeezed her hand. I love hearing that. Later they walked to the park at the end of the street. The bench was there. June approached it, then stopped. She didn't sit right away. Declan waited without pressing. Maren waited without bracing. Finally, June sat for a moment, hands on her knees, feet dangling, shoulders relaxed. This bench is okay, she said. Maren smiled. I think so too. After a few seconds, June stood again. I don't need it anymore. They walked on, leaving it behind, without ceremony. At home, June taped a new drawing to the wall. The river was bright. Trees lined the bank. 3 figures stood near the path, and the bench empty. Declan looked at it for a long time. June noticed. It's finished, she said. Declan nodded. It is. Because the ending wasn't a miracle. It was a choice made once, then made again, then made again. A man stopped. A child told the truth. A mother's proof got heard. And systems changed, so nobody had to rely on luck. Outside, the river reflected light instead of swallowing it. Inside, a child slept easily, breathing steady, no longer defined by waiting. Did this story touch your heart? Let us know how you felt. Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments below. If it moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss our next heartfelt story. Click the end screen to watch more emotional journeys. See you in the next one.